Next, we are tracking down the midnight assassin. We are mastering Paroxysmal Nocturnal Hematuria or PNH. This is the final intrinsic defect we must conquer. Let's get straight to the case file. Our patient is a 30-year-old male. The onset of his symptoms happened in the morning post overnight travel. Look at his presentation. First, he has dark cherry red morning urine. Second, his labs show pancytopenia. His RBCs, WBCs and platelets are all decreased. And third, he has sudden severe right upper quadrant pain and hepatomegaly. What connects a train ride, dark urine, low counts and an enlarged liver? We have to look at how blood normally survives. Here is how normal RBCs survive the bloodstream. First, we must identify the threat, the complement cascade. Think of them as roaming plasma snipers looking to deploy the membrane attack complex or MAC. To survive, your cells have the shields, CD55, known as decay accelerating factor or DAF, and CD59, known as MAC inhibitory protein or MIRL. These shields tell the snipers, friendly fire, do not shoot. But shields don't just float, they need to be attached. This brings us to the tether, the GPI anchor, or glycosyl phosphatidyl inositol. This acts as the molecular clip locking the shield securely to the cell membrane. So what goes wrong in PNH? Look at the pathogenesis. The PIGA mutation. The mechanism is an acquired somatic mutation in the bone marrow hematopoietic stem cells. The defect is that a PIGA gene mutation means the bone marrow factory cannot manufacture the GPI anchor. Without the molecular clip, what happens? Look at the result. The shields, CD55 and CD59 literally fall off. As a result, your RBCs, WBCs and platelets enter the bloodstream completely naked and unprotected from the complement snipers. But why is this case called paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria? Enter the midnight trigger. During sleep, your respiratory rate naturally slows down. This causes carbon dioxide retention, a mild physiologic buildup in the blood. That CO2 turns into respiratory acidosis, causing a slight drop in blood pH. Here's your cheat code. Complement activation thrives in acidic environments. When the pH drops at night, the snipers wake up. The result? Massive intravascular hemolysis. The unprotected cells are slaughtered by the membrane attack complex while the patient sleeps. The patient wakes up to dark hemoglobinuria in the morning. This translates directly into the PNH clinical triad. Memorize these three pillars. First, hemolytic anemia. Crucially, this is Coombs negative. Why? Because it is complement-mediated destruction, not antibody-mediated. Second, pancytopenia. The mutation happens in the stem cell. That means WBCs and platelets are also missing their GPI anchors and they get destroyed too. Third, venous thrombosis. Do not forget this. It is the number one cause of death in PNH. Wait a minute. If platelets are being destroyed, why is the patient clotting? Welcome to our vertical integration alert for gastroenterology, the thrombosis paradox. Look at the mechanism. When naked platelets are attacked by complement, they don't just die quietly. They panic, activate, and dump massive procoagulant contents into the blood. The clinical translation of this is Budd-Chiari syndrome. Hepatic vein thrombosis causing sudden hepatomegaly and right upper quadrant pain. Lock in this diagnostic rule. Hepatic vein thrombosis plus morning dark urine equals PNH until proven otherwise. This perfectly explains our patient on the train. So how do we catch the assassin? Look at diagnosing the assassin, past versus present. On your older question banks, you will see historical artifacts like Ham's test, which uses acidified serum, or the sucrose hemolysis test. The concept was forcing the cells to pop in vitro. But clinically, these are obsolete and rarely used today. Today we use the gold standard, flow cytometry. The concept here is tagging blood with fluorescent markers to physically detect the missing surface proteins. Let's look closer at flow cytometry, the master key. Our primary targets are detecting the physical absence of the shields CD55 and CD59 on both RBCs and WBCs. But for the ultimate confirm, we order the FLAIR test, which stands for fluorescent aerolysin. Look at the mechanism. FLAIR binds directly to the GPI anchor itself. The result, if no anchor is detected, the diagnosis of PNH is definitively confirmed. Now we must save the patient. Look at pharmacology. Disarming the weapon. We use a drug called eculizumab, or its newer cousin, ravulizumab. Look at the graphic. Eculizumab acts as a block on the C5 protein. The mechanism is that it is a monoclonal antibody that specifically targets and neutralizes complement protein C5. The effect? It completely halts the formation of membrane attack complex or MAC. The intravascular slaughter stops instantly, but saving them from PNH creates a massive boat trap. This is our horizontal integration layer for microbiology. This is the fatal catch. Here is the vulnerability. Eculizumab intentionally destroys the patient's MAC complex C5 to C9. Here is the threat. The bacteria, Neisseria meningitidis, relies exclusively on the MAC complex to be cleared by the human immune system. Therefore, here is the mandate. Patients must receive the meningococcal vaccine at least 2 weeks prior to starting eculizumab to prevent a lethal meningitis infection. And with that, we have officially mastered the intrinsic defects of chapter 14. We conquered the membrane defects with hereditary spherocytosis. We beat the hemoglobin defects of sickle cell and thalassemia. We disarmed the enzyme oxidative bombs in G6PD deficiency. And we just got the anchor defects PNH, the midnight assassin. But I leave you with this teaser. The factory is perfect, the RBCs are flawless, but the outside world is hostile. In our next session, we enter the hostile world of part 4 and 5. Get ready for autoimmune hemolytic anemia and the microangiopathic hemolytic anemias.